history. Sometimes it's really good. Sometimes I've had my my little disappointments. But on my 15th flight, there's some background noise. Somebody's not muted or something. Something's going on there, Paul.
Okay, let me try.
Sounds like birds or something. Everybody should be on mute except Paul and I.
Yeah, I was trying.
Okay, so my first flight was in June of 1986, and in my early taxi, you know how you bond the pedals to the canard, and when I started taxiing, I found out that the pedals were in the wrong spot, you know, when I was actually in there driving around. So I cut them loose and moved them a couple of inches. I don't remember which way. And then, so then I started flying. And on my 15th flight, when I touched down, both rudder pedals broke loose. And so I had no directional control. And as you know, on that original design, if your rudder pedals go, you don't have any tail wheel steering, you don't have any rudder at all. And it was single pull brakes, so I went off the runway. I pulled the brakes real hard because I was kind of heading toward a building, and it flipped upside down. And I was okay. The grass came in the cockpit. I had the tail cone was cracked, the rear wing was broken, the cowling, of course, the prop, and the canopy was broken. So it took me a year to get that fixed. Built a new wing. The local chapter helped me out a lot. I was up in Minnesota. Built a new wing, fixed the tail cone, repainted it, got it up going, and then in 1987 I moved down to Carbondale, down here in Carbondale. I currently have 2,045 hours of showing on the Hobbs. My longest flight was a few years ago from Orange, Massachusetts to Carbondale, nonstop. That was 5 hours and 40 minutes, and I covered 964 miles on one tank of gas. And then in the other noteworthy item, in 1999, I flew it coast to coast in one day from French Valley Airport. Started off over the, actually flew west till I got over the Pacific a little bit and turned around and kept on flying until I landed at Dare County Airport near Kill Devil Hill in North Carolina. And that was a 16-hour day. So those are kind of like some of the big highlights. Now, in about the year 2000, I started air racing, and I got that bug going, and felt the need for speed. And so that's what my focus has been over the years, is how to make it go faster. I did a Sun and Fun race. It was like a really short one, like an 80-miler. And I don't even remember what the speeds were on that one. I've been in, I think, 11 Air Venture Cup races. First one was in 2002, and that started at Kill Devil Hill, the Wright Brothers Airport, cross country to Dayton, Ohio, and then we overnighted in Dayton and then up to Oshkosh. And my speed on that race, measured speed, was 172 miles an hour. So that's when I basically started making speed improvements to this. Then over time, with things that I've done, my current speed is about 211 miles an hour with the 0200. So that's kind of like the basic setup on here. Let's see. So I've had it to Oshkosh, I think 26 times. I've flown into the big show with this. One day it didn't look like I was going to make it at all. And then from Carbondale, I flew up into Oshkosh, got my mug, my prop tag, and I turned around and flew back home. But at least I got up there during that thing. So let's look at the airplane a little bit instead of me. All right. So nothing, hardly anything on this aircraft is original. This is the third wing that's been on it, second canard, second vertical fin, third or fourth canopy. Engine's been redone a couple of times. About the only thing that's original on it is the fuselage shells, the fuel tanks, first fuel tanks, and the bulkheads. Let's see what we'd like to cover now. We've done speeds. This aircraft, well, about the iterations when I wanted to go fast and make that stuff happen. Guy across from me is opening his hangar now. It's a little distracting. Some of the first things I did was to do the aerodynamics. And if you call Craig Cato's company, his daughter Nicole, when you say what pitch do you want for your aircraft, would you want to make, what pitch do you want for your propeller to make it go faster? What she's going to do is she's going to ask you if you finish your aerodynamic improvements. Because so before you put in a different prop to pull you faster, you have to make sure the airplane's as slickery as possible. So that's the stuff that I worked on. One of the first things that I did was work on the wheel pants. The wheel pants, as described in the quickie plans, was pretty lousy. It was just basically a round thing with kind of a plain Jane with a point on the end. And I went up with some friends in they had a Cherokee 140, and we did a little flying, formation flying, and I tufted the thing. I put red yarn over it. We flew close to each other, and they filmed it for me. And you could see all sorts of things, mainly on the back of the wheel pant here. The yarn was lifting off, and that means you've got turbulence, and therefore you've got drag. So I started working on that, and basically my first iteration, I just put this up on a rack, and I took out my Sawzall, and I chopped off the end, and I chopped off the front. I have a friend that has an RV7, and he had wheel pants that he hadn't installed yet. So I took those RV7 wheel pants and stuck them next to my wheel pant, and I had a bunch of foam all over it, and then I started carving on it and trying to make it look a little bit, let me see if I can find a template here. So I made these, next iteration, I actually made some hot wire templates and used them to form my wheel pants. Hey, I'm gonna mute just for a second, okay?
Sam, while you're muted, Jay wanted to see your interior. Everybody talks about the interior by Hoskins.
Okay, I just wanted to talk to my guy across from me. So anyway, so I started working on the wheel pants. And then after that, what did I do? Start looking at things like fillets. You know, investigate everywhere. Everything that you can do to make something slicker, go ahead and do it. And then, of course, I started working on the engine and doing engine things. And I've had a lot of iterations of that. Let me set this aside. And this is what it looks like now. Some of the big things that I've done, some of the big things that I've done to it is I wanted to streamline the whole engine as it sat on the airplane. So one thing I did there is I installed a 7-inch spinner so the front end wouldn't be so abrupt. And then I also replaced the oil tank. Now the oil tank, as we know, and the 0200 hangs down and it's in the air quite a bit. And so the first thing I did was to make a carbon fiber tank. This guy here. Made a carbon fiber tank But when I started running it, these supports broke, so that wasn't going to work. So a gentleman, another quickie guy in Atlanta, made me an aluminum tank. And the whole idea with the other tanks is to streamline the bottom so we're not hanging down here below. So the other thing, then I installed electronic ignition. I had Klaus Savier's Lightspeed, terrific system. And then I went on with that for a while. And then as I'm doing these races, you know, Klaus was talking in his seminars about fuel injection. And I thought, oh, man, I like that fuel injection. And then I asked him about it. And he says, oh, no, I'm not going to be selling fuel injection because all these guys, they got high pressure fuel in the engine compartment and it's too dangerous. So, well, I'll have to figure it out on my own. So Lynn French had already started going in that way, and he installed a fuel injection system, but he kept his carburetor. And he was using the Rotary World engine controller, which is a little box not much bigger than my phone. And that is both an ignition controller and the fuel injection controller. And we use automotive fuel injectors by Bosch. So building on Lynn's experience with it, I got rid of my Lightspeed Engineering fuel, ignition system and installed the EC3 system from Rotary World, which controls both of them. And up on top here, the way it works is there's a 60-tooth, actually it's a 58-tooth trigger wheel, and I have two pickup sensors, and they detect the RPMs of the engine. This is a primary one, and in case the primary fails, this is a backup. The spark plugs, each spark plug has its own individual coil. So here's cylinder number 4, cylinder number 2, and of course the other side. And I also have 4 of them that are buried down inside the firewall. Coming out, the way the fuel works in the aircraft is we have a normal, well, I have 32 gallons of fuel. So that's how I was able to make that long trip from Orange, Massachusetts, because I got so much fuel. But the header tank drains and feeds to a Walbro pump, which is in the tail cone, and that pumps fuel up to the engine. And we have a free loop around the engine. And you can see here on the intake tubes, this is a fuel injector is installed here. So each intake tube has its own fuel injector. In addition, the throttle body has 2 injectors, and that's the backup system in case the primary system fails. So that's what the front looks like. The throttle body is a Genv. It's from England, and it's for automotive purposes, auto racing. And then my other injectors are back there, and you can see the short streamlined fuel tank there. So there's also a pressure relief valve, voltage regulator. There's a voltage regulator, not a voltage regulator, fuel pressure regulator. It's inside the cockpit area, and then it returns that back into the header tank. So the fuel goes from the header back to the fuel pumps through a big filter, a fine filter, up through the engine, and then back into the header tank, and it's a constant circulating system. Now, this guy that made this
Sam?
controller, yes.
I got a question on your fuel injection. He said, how do you switch to the backup injectors?
Good question. The controller box, and I don't know if you can see it, it's just a small box here, and it's got the electronics in there. It has 2 sides, an A side and a B side. So you always fly on A. So when you flip the switch from A to B, at that point, it drops out the 4 injectors on the tubes, and it engages the 2 injectors on the throttle body. And that's how that system works.
And Sam, as long as you're there, Jay wanted to see your interior by Hoskins.
Okay, I'm gonna do that right now. I'm gonna pull a light over here a little bit. Let's see if it show up the inside of that a little bit. Okay, this is interior by Hoskins. This is a standard Walmart camping pad. And I'm going to get in here in a second and we'll go through the panel a little bit. As far as fuel tanks, I have a 16.5 gallons here. I have 6.5 gallons up on top. I only run my fuel tank intermittently. I don't run it all the time. I know a lot of guys run them all the time. I don't. And I have a 15-minute warning on my GPS. Every 15 minutes it comes up and says check fuel. So that's my system, how I keep my fuel level up. I have, in addition to those tanks, I have another 9 gallons in the back, which is removable, held in place with these cords. And I don't know if you can see here, this is my my dual fuel pumps, Walbro fuel pumps for the fuel injection. I have 2 good-sized batteries in here. In this compartment, I have my Odyssey 625, and then back here I have another Odyssey 625, and when I start the engine, I turn both batteries on. The electrical system is completely redundant. Or I can isolate one side from the other. It requires a lot of juice to keep this thing in the air. Between the fuel injectors and the pumps and the ignition systems and everything, I use about 14 amps to stay in the air. So that's why batteries are critical and battery management is critical. All right, let me hop in here real quick. Let me go over the panel here a little bit. Oh, we went upside down. How do we do that?
Stop going inverted, Sam.
Huh, yeah, okay. All right, so here's my my Dynon. It's a D180. It's out of production now. It's old business. I have a Garmin GPS 196, which is tied to the Garmin. An ICOM radio, old Bendix King transponder, and I recently installed Sky Beacon. That's the ADSB out on the wingtip. And then for ADSB in, I got this little Samsung tablet. I'm using a Stratix system. I'll run through the panel a little bit. This is an O2 sensor, so I can see what my fuel air mixture is. This is the control panel for the electronics. Use this both for electronic ignition and fuel injection. You use this to program the mixture map and your ignition timing and all that stuff, and it's really kind of a pain in the butt. If I was to do this over again, I would have 2 Lightspeed Engineering, 2 Lightspeeds electronic ignition, and then I would use the fuel injection system. It's the mechanical one. I think it's like Air Power or somebody. This is one that Corbin Geyser has in his, that Mark Summers built. I think that's a sweet deal. I see Mike's question there. I think I probably had 200 hours on this sensor, and it seems to be just working fine. So I've talked to Klaus Stoppier about his, and he says he had no problems with his sensor.
Sam?
I've got a lot of switches up here, and I'll just run through them. This is my main transfer. So this is from the header, from the main tank up to the header. This is the aux sensor, aux transfer. This moves it from the tank behind me up front. This is my master. I have an essential bus alternate feed, which is follows the Bob Knuckles system of wiring. This is my selector switch for the ignition. I either have run off the top plugs, the bottom plugs, or both. This is the power for the control unit. This is my #1 fuel pump, and they're on a hot bus, by the way. The #1 and #2 fuel pumps are on the hot bus. Then I can pick up my engine battery here. This is like a master. This is kind of redundant, actually. Coils upper and coils lower switches. They're kind of redundant to the selector, but there they are. And this switch, again, back to Mike Dwyer's question of how do you select, you just go from A to B to select your primary fuel injectors to the backup fuel injectors. So if you just go like that, now it's running the B system. ADS-B sky beacon and my strobe light. And that's kind of like this. That's what I've got here.
Sam,
shoot me a question or two.
can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Mike asked, O2 sensors, lead tends to kill them. How are you making that work?
Oh, I just answered that. I've probably got a couple hundred hours on this one, and it's just working fine.
So you're not actually doing anything special to them?
No. I think that might be a rumor that happens. I don't know, but from my experience and Klaus Savier's, he's got a lot more time on his. He says they just keep running. So maybe it's the particular brand I have. I don't know.
Have you changed the compression ratio on your O200?
Yes, I have. I have 9-to-1 pistons. I have 9-to-1 pistons in this thing. I typically fly around. My cruise RPM is 2,800. I fly at, and when I'm in the race mode, I'm flying at 3,100 RPM.
And what's your basic empty weight and max takeoff weight?
My basic empty weight is, I think I'm at 690 right now, and with all this stuff in here, and my maximum takeoff weight is pretty much what will fit. I'm called my gross officially. I call it 1,300 pounds.
And earlier on, you talked about you've had 3 or 4 replacement canopies, or you're on
Yes.
your 3rd or 4th canopy. The question was, where did you get your replacement canopies?
Well, this one that's on here is Todd's canopies, and Todd passed away in an aircraft accident. Well, he didn't pass away; he got killed a couple of years ago. So you're not going to get them from him anymore. Airplane Plastics, I think it is, out of somewhere in Ohio. They made a whole bunch of them, and they make a really nice canopy. I wish this one was one because theirs are lighter. I don't know if they're still in business or not, but that's Airplane Plastics. It's the place I would go to.
That's all the questions that people have put in so far. Oops, here's another one. Do you have a special injection map for your racing high RPM runs?
Good question. The map on this thing, there's 132 points. So when you first program this, it's a pain in the butt. What you have to do is you run the engine at a certain RPM. Let's say you're 1,000 RPM, and then you adjust your mixture, and you program your mixture up or down so you think you've got it where you want it. And then you go up 50 RPM, and now we're going to go up to 1,050, and you do that again, and then you hit the store button, and you do it again, and you hit a store button, and you keep on going all the way up. And you do that on the ground. Now, you can hook a computer up to it, and you can look at that mixture map, and that'll tell you how even you are. Now, how you're doing in the racing mode, you know, that's where I'm kind of looking at my O2 sensor to tell me how my mixture is doing. There's a lot to it. It's a complicated system. Once you get it in place, it works great, but getting there takes a while. And the other drawback is the guy's out of business now, so the service is pretty, support's pretty weak.
So one more thing, Sam, if you could repeat how long you've had the airplane, how many hours you've got on it, because I think the idiot doing the recording forgot to record it at the beginning.
Oh, man. Okay, the aircraft first flight was in June of 1986. It's coming up, I think, June 8th. So that's going to be my 34th anniversary of the first flight coming up. And I've got currently got 2,049 hours showing on the Hobbs.
Wow.
I used to fly it. You know, I'm not flying anywhere near what I used to fly. You know, I had an accident a few years ago. I had stopped for fuel in Pennsylvania, and when I had Sandy with, we were on the way to the quickie flying, and we were went to take off, and the right gear went into a puddle that was out there, which I couldn't see because of the tail dragger thing. This big puddle, and it grabbed my right gear and slung us off the runway, and then we went and broke the canopy and the prop and all that stuff. So what was my point on that? I don't remember the point. What was the question again?
Well, let me ask you a couple other ones here. Do you have an estimate on the horsepower of your engine?
Yeah. Well, you know, it's just a guess. You know, Continental says 100 hours, 100 horsepower at max power. I just know it's pretty fast. You know, it's a pretty slick little airplane. I mean, you know, slick and slippery. And it's fun flying in formation with other, you know, Cessnas and Pipers and stuff like that. And over the course of time, looking at the archive records are on the Sport Air Racing website. You can look and see, go through the records, and you compare your speed to others, you know. And I'll be right there with a dirty Bonanza. I'll take, you know, a really good Bonanza will be faster than me. I beat a whole bunch of RVs in these races and stuff like that. So,
can you show us your reflexor control that was in the
Sure.
cockpit?
Happy to. Reflexor, it's I wish I can't really show you inside the aircraft. I would have to, if somebody wanted to post a message on the Q list as follow-up, I can point you to the design of it. But my reflexor, that's my control for it right there. It's a ratchet push-pull. And also, while we're here, might as well talk about the brakes a little bit. I have dual brakes, and it just goes to 2 of the Hurst Earhart cylinders. And so if I'm not using the throttle, I'm using the brakes here. And then my parking brake is one of these rope ratchet things. And so I've stuck that on there and just pull that back, and now my parking brake is locked. And that's the same tie down that I use to hold the fuel pump. You know, and it's about $8 at Rural King, and yeah, it's really has been working great over time.
I like the parking brake. That's a good one. Couple other questions here. We've got about 5 minutes left.
Hey, hang on. Okay, he's gone.
Do you have a website with pictures of your wing and canard replacements?
Oh, if I got a website, it's samhoskins, one word, .blogspot.com. Or you can just Google me, Sam Hoskins, quickie aircraft. It used to be you could Google Sam Hoskins and I would come up all the time, but now there's a soccer player in England named Sam Hoskins, so he's hogs all the #1 spot, and I don't play soccer.
Did you solve your secondary fuel injection problems or put in a new system?
Did I solve what?
Your secondary fuel injection problems.
It's working marginally, we'll call it. I think it's working enough to get me on the ground if I should need to. And the question is, it has to do with mapping. There's 2 programming chips inside the controller, and to program them individually is a pain in the butt. I'll just leave it at that. And so it's hard to tune it up. But I think I've got a system, if it fails, it's going to get me on the ground okay. I hate that I think word, but that's kind of where we're at. Another thing I wanted to mention is when I had, somewhere along the line, I had broke the tail spring. And I was getting a BFR. And when I broke the tail spring, of course, I had no rudder, had no tail wheel, and I went off the runway, and I put the stick over to the left to try and force a ground loop, which it did, but this wheel pant broke off, and then it bounced off the canopy, and again, prop, engine. And so in the rebuild after that one happened, I separated the, the original tail dragger had the cables come to the rudder and then back down to the tail wheel, or the tail wheel and back up to the rudder, I guess it was. But anyway, it's a stupid system. And so what I did is I had the two cables come up, and inside the tail cone, they just joined together into one here and then on up. And so after that accident happened, the improvements what I made was, if the tail spring should break again, my rudder will still work, and now I have differential steering, which I did not have back then.
Sam, what are your prop pitch numbers?
I was just looking that up. I've used a lot of props. I think this is a Craig Cato, makes beautiful propellers, and I think this is a 60 by 76, maybe 74. When I first put this one on, it was a 62 inch, and it was too much prop, so I sent it back to him. He trimmed it down and changed the pitch a little bit. I think originally it was a 62 76. For most Q-200s with a normal engine in it and everything, 60 by 70 seems to be the way to go. Highly recommend Cato, but I wouldn't put a Cato on right away. And like his daughter Nicole says, you don't get your prop tuned up until you've made all of your aerodynamic and engine improvements first, and then you do the prop last. Don't go around the other way. Just a couple random things. I've gone to obviously a plenum type cooling system. These inlets are from St. James. These are RV7 inlets, and I've been very pleased with them and how that works. The plenum cooling is really good. I spend a lot of time on engine cooling because you just figure this air is coming in, and the ideal situation in theory would be for the air to blow in here and go unobstructed out the bottom. So,
Sam?
Yes.
We got less than a minute to go. I just wanted to remind everybody, if you still want to converse, come right back to the same meeting when this ends in less than a minute. And we'll open up everybody's mic, and everybody can ask questions or just chat or whatever you want to do. So, sorry,
all right.
Go ahead and finish.
All right, well, thanks everybody. Thanks for watching, and we'll get this uploaded to YouTube. And I guess that's it. Have a good day.
All right. Thanks a lot, Sam. We appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.